My name is Chris Barrineau, and today I'm speaking with Kambiz Naficy, a renowned meditation master and creator of Coming Full Circle, a transformative course that helps people reprogram subconscious beliefs, heal from past traumas, and unlock their true potential. With decades of experience blending ancient spiritual practices and modern psychology, Kambiz has guided thousands towards lives of peace, purpose, and empowerment. It is always a pleasure to speak with you. I appreciate you taking the time today, Kambiz. How's it going where you are?
Everything is fine. I'm always happy to share all of what's in my heart with other human beings. There are many things that people in society don't want to talk about. These are pent-up beliefs, emotions, repetitive behavioral patterns that bring people pain, but they've kind of stuffed this stuff inside. And when we bring it out into openness and we give some of these things names, people gain a greater understanding of their own inner lives and they become empowered.
Yes, indeed. That all of that hits home here with me. And just for full disclosure, I met you in 2020 and took the Coming Full Circle course, and it has done what some people might call miracles for my life, what goes on inside my head, my subconscious, and also it's manifested amazing material aspects of my life, from relationships to health, and even my lifestyle and living arrangements. It's been fantastic. Can you share a bit with me about your journey, where you're from, your background, and what led you to this place to blend ancient spiritual practices and modern psychology?
Sure. I was born in Iran, and I grew up in a upper middle income family. Had a lot of privileges, but because of the sub-society that I was born with, or born in, because of the sub-society that I was born in, some of the values that sub-society held didn't really harmonize with my own true nature. My own nature was one of a poet, philosopher. I understood people's emotions well. I had endless patience in listening to people's life stories. So I was kind of a mellow, artistic philosopher type. And I was born in a society where people were talking about Mercedes-Benzes and being members of the Senate and the government, ambassadors and so forth. And so when I was a late teenager, I was sitting around on a summer beginning my senior year of high school, and I looked at my own nature and I looked at what the surrounding people were concerned with and valuing, and I felt like an oddball. And the mistake of that 16-and-a-half-year-old was that I gathered a sense of shame, like, well, if I'm not like them, there must be something wrong with me. And that put me on the wrong tangent in life. In other words, I started to ignore how I was programmed, my own nature. And so, I started gravitating towards a Harvard MBA, Columbia School of International Affairs. Eventually, I wound up in Wall Street as an international banker, all the while very alienated from myself. And although there wasn't anything horribly wrong with my life materially or socially, I was alienated from myself because I thought that I needed to be somebody else that a well-to-do society should approve of. And that was very uncomfortable for me. And right up to the age of 32, I was still ignoring who I really was or going against my own grain. And at 32, I decided that I'm missing out on something really big in my life, that I need to come back to the still voice within me. to be more at peace with myself and be proud of who I am, be proud of the kind of individual person that I am. While I was doing that journey, coming back home, the homecoming journey, I decided that two different approaches are needed. Number one, I realized that the software in my head, the subconscious mind, my software program had already been programmed by my family, my society, my culture. So there was programming that was already instilled in my subconscious. Secondly, I realized that any kind of homecoming has to do with the recognition of an inner soul, that still voice in your heart. That's where spirituality came in. I decided that I needed to surrender my ego, the me, the wounded self who thought he needed to act like bankers or very rich people. And so I realized a combination of spirituality, making peace with myself, prayer, meditation was necessary. I also realized that in order to undo the programming that had happened while growing up, I needed to know something about psychology, about the subconscious mind, how to get into the otherwise closed subconscious mind, to get into the programming and how to shift the programming and change it. So from 32 for another 15 years, I spent time at holistic centers of the West, understanding more psychology. I also spent 15 years back and forth to India, meeting with the grand masters of meditation and yoga to combine this double road of cleansing baggage from the subconscious added to deep spirituality, deep meditation, and kind of transcending the ego and the busy mind and tapping into another mind, which I call witness consciousness. That other mind is the quiet observer. We call it being. Instead of doingness, sometimes you breathe and go into beingness, and suddenly the crazy world starts to make more sense.
So it's these two highways, as you call them, which is the core philosophy behind your work. Why do you think that dual highway is the answer? Let me speak a little bit from personal experience. I have, for many years, sought peace within my mind. I thought there was something wrong with me. Not that I was all bad, but there was something not quite right. As you mentioned about yourself earlier, you didn't quite fit in. And I dealt with that for many years, tried many self-help programs, books, tapes, seminars, what some might call the self-help jungle. And until I came across your work and your approach, the standard approaches were not fixing or fulfilling or getting me to the core root. A minute ago, you mentioned the word homecoming. Can you tie my experience together with this dual highway and why maybe some of those programs work for others, but they didn't work for me? I was seeking something deeper, and maybe that something deeper is the homecoming. Can you speak to that?
Yes, what I mean by homecoming is that in the center of your existence, you plus 9 billion other people, in the center of our existence, we have instinct, we have our own intuition, we have inborn talents, we have dreams and tendencies. In other words, I remember being in second grade of elementary school, and I was a good communicator. I would write good compositions. I was not good in math, but I was very good with languages, understanding emotions. I'm letting this ambulance noise pass away. Very good. Yeah, so all the way back in second grade, I knew certain things about my nature, and so do you. What I'm really saying is we need to come back home, because in the center of our existence, there are inborn talents. We have tendencies. We are attracted to certain things. I know little kids who've bought telescopes and they're fascinated by space. Other people love learning foreign languages. So what happens is that as we're beginning to be socialized, as our parents first send us to school, then we meet up with these brats in the classroom, and then there's the classroom teacher and the gym teacher, and then after adolescence, it's a question of, who's going to find the most attractive person in the class to date. So there are comparisons, there are judgments, and all of that stuff makes the lens of your own consciousness, your own intuition, more cloudy. There is nothing as uncomfortable as drifting far away from your truth, the message of your heart, your own inborn talents, what truly interests you. If we look at modern day society, there are so many things that interfere with somebody's own internal radar. Sometimes I call it beingness. I say, stop what you're doing, stop writing another email, sit down and just observe the moment. Put your attention between the two nostrils and just notice that you're breathing. This kind of beingness brings you back home. Because you're alive, you must have a center of your own existence. Everything in modern day society is consciously or unconsciously designed to yank you out of your own center. Now, in terms of the two roads, if I want somebody to be whole, I need to teach them two things. One is having them investigate to see how they were programmed by the school, by the gym teacher, by the parents, by the early life incidents like divorce between the parents or bankruptcy. Have them identify the events and then how they interpreted those events. Because we make negative interpretations about not being put on the team by the basketball coach. We make negative interpretations of ourselves. Has nothing to do with basketball.
Earlier today, in fact, just an hour before we got on air here, I came across a quote, I believe from Neville Goddard. And the quote is this: every circumstance is neutral until consciousness gives it meaning.
Yes. Yes. I mean, when I conduct the Coming Full Circle Self-Transformation course, everybody comes into the course with stories. This fellow took out the love of his life to a school dance in 8th grade. He went to the bathroom, came back, and his best friend was kissing the girl. His interpretation was, I am unlucky in love and I'm a loser in life. See, that interpretation was killing him by the time I met him when he was 48 years old. Had nothing to do with the 8th grade. That's what the subconscious does. Whenever you meet up with an event that is too much to digest, too much to pass on, you stuff it into the subconscious. Later on, it keeps popping back up. So that's one of the two roads. I must have you go back to some of these interpretations and reframe them with the wisdom that you have today. Of course, I give you many skills for reinterpreting. But the second road altogether, and yoga tells us this, is that your human mind has two layers. One of them is conducting this interview. It's your logical mind. Your brain is on beta waves. You're thinking logic. You're using your vocabulary. The other layer of your mind, called witness consciousness, is like a still voice within you. It's a quiet observer. If you own an animal, you'll know that when you take your dog to the coffee shop, the dog sits kind of next to your feet and is just observing the other customers, observing the birds on the branches, observing the cat behind the windowsill. That quiet observation is what the second layer of your mind has. It's called beingness. When you learn how to be instead of do, then you start to come back home, especially if you've already treaded the first road, which is to get into the subconscious, realize which bad interpretations you made, and you start to heal those interpretations. So 2 roads, beingness and cleansing out baggage from the subconscious mind.
When I went through that process of looking at the events in my childhood with some objectivity, 50 plus years later, it became obvious to me that the things that I experienced weren't intentional. The environment I was in with my elders, teachers, etc., they weren't intentionally embedding these subconscious seeds that that manifested in ways that weren't good for me later. It was an amazing experience getting into that, and then coming to an intentional understanding that the people at that point in my life were doing the best that they could with the tools that they had.
Yes, and I'll add something from my life. Growing up around some snobs in an aristocratic society, I later became very sensitized towards snobbish people. And then I had a chance to rethink this, and I said to myself, Kambiz, it was you who was sitting there the summer of 11th grade. It was you who got scared of your own nature. It was you who was philosophical, who wanted to understand people's feelings. And it was you who at some point became ashamed of who you were because you thought that you weren't fitting into the aristocracy. So at a much later age, I realized that my sensitivity towards snobbish people is my problem, because they did not force me to be philosophical. They did not force me to do a Harvard MBA. They didn't force me to become a banker and to later divorce my life and become a guru. So this was a big reckoning for me, because prior to that, I was sensitized to the Ivy League schools and people who worship Mercedes-Benzes. And then I realized, well, that's your problem, Kambiz. The day you make peace with yourself, when you make peace with yourself, when you take away your own self-created sensitivity about your natural talent, when you're no longer sensitive about who you truly are, then you can make friends with bankers or ballerinas. Doesn't matter.
So why don't we wrap this up with the tip? So let me ask you a question. What advice would you give someone who wants to start identifying and understanding those early messages, those early seeds, as I call them, that made their way into the subconscious? What's something that somebody could do to begin to realize that maybe all of those patterns that they experienced at a young age that are not serving them today? Like, what would you tell them to do today? What's one actionable tip?
Well, because I teach people along 2 highways, one is spirituality, the other is cleansing out the baggage from the subconscious mind. On the spiritual note, I would say once in a while, stop doing, and just for a few seconds, bring your attention to the bridge between the 2 nostrils and just notice that you're breathing. And give yourself 1 minute to just sit, notice that you're breathing. And just like cats and dogs, just look around. Instead of doing, just breathe and notice and observe. And you wouldn't believe how much energy and peace you gain by just being for a moment. So that's on the spiritual note. On the psychological note, if I had 5 minutes, I would say to somebody, please identify your repetitive melodrama. Some people are always bankrupt. Some people are always sick. Some people are always breaking off relationships. Some people are always being cheated. You know, they just get together with the wrong business partners. There is some repetitive drama in your life. And in terms of addictions, sometimes there are multi-generational problems in a family, like alcoholism going down 3 generations, or multiple divorces going down 2 generations. So on the psychological path, the first question I would ask somebody is, what is your repetitive drama? If you're a Broadway director, if you direct plays on Broadway, how does your last act always end? Because time after time in the Coming Full Circle program, I interview students, and it's very evident for me what their repetitive drama is. You know, the heartbroken person, the one who's been cheated in business multiple times, the one who's got psychosomatic diseases all the time.
I had a friend
Yep.
who went through multiple, a marriage and then multiple serious relationships with females, and every single one of them cheated on him. And I noticed after the second one, and I said, there's something going on here. I think that he expects all women to cheat on him. And then sure enough, he gets into the next relationship and she cheated on him again. I think that in some of our past talks, you've mentioned that there's part of our internal machinery within our subconscious, maybe it's our conscious, but maybe our subconscious, that wants to be right. We want to prove ourselves right. So if we manifest this woman cheating on us and it happens, then we're right. And see, I'm right. It's defeating the ego. I've heard you talk about this before.
Yeah, we call it the self-fulfilling prophecy. Everybody has an I told you so, I told you. Everybody I've ever met, until they see their programming, and as an adult, they can reinterpret the self-limiting interpretations. Like that friend of mine came back from the bathroom and his girlfriend was kissing somebody else. At this age, I helped him to reinterpret. He wasn't a loser. That was an interpretation in 8th grade. But first we have to see. First we have to see which events hurt us and how we came up with a hurtful interpretation of what was happening way back when. Now to see it on the spiritual side, you just sit and be for a moment. Get out of the hecticness of your chaotic life. That's on the spiritual side. On the psychological side, it's not too hard. Tell me, if your life is a Broadway play, what is that repetitive ending to all of your plays? Is it heartbreak, bankruptcy, psychosomatic diseases, alcoholism? What is it?
Very good. Kambiz, thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Most welcome. Yes, I'm eager to have our next fireside chat without a fireplace.